Every airliner you've ever boarded carries a hidden backup that works exactly once. A turbine no bigger than a bicycle wheel tucked in the fuselage that may sit dormant for years. But when every engine quits and every generator goes dark, it drops into the wind and keeps the aircraft controllable. It cannot be reset in the air. For more than 5 decades, it has helped save more than 2,400 lives. Every modern airliner is built on a strict hierarchy of backup systems, each one designed to keep the aircraft flying even as layers of redundancy fail. At the top, the engines themselves generate power for flight controls, instruments, and cabin systems. If an engine-driven generator drops offline, a second or even third generator takes over. Should those fail, the aircraft's auxiliary power unit, a small jet engine in the tail, can pick up the load. If both engines and the auxiliary power unit are lost, onboard batteries bridge the gap, buying the crew precious seconds. But batteries can only provide meaningful power for a handful of minutes. When every other source is exhausted, the final safeguard is triggered: the Ram Air Turbine, called the RAT. The logic is relentless. The Ram Air Turbine is not just another backup. It is the final mechanical link between a powerless aircraft and controlled flight. It works because the airplane itself is still moving through the air even as every generator and battery drains away. As long as the wings have lift and the fuselage has speed, the Ram Air Turbine can spin up and deliver the bare minimum, enough hydraulic pressure and electricity to keep essential controls alive. On July 23, 1983, Air Canada Flight 143, a Boeing 767, lost both engines at 41,000 feet over northern Canada. A metric to imperial conversion error had left the tanks dry. Captain Robert Pearson and First Officer Maurice Quintal watched their instruments flicker as the last battery faded. Then, with a heavy metallic clunk, the Ram Air Turbine deployed into the slipstream. It powered the hydraulic systems just enough to let them guide the 132-ton jet in a silent glide over nearly 100 nautical miles. The landing at Gimli, Manitoba was rough but controlled. All 69 people on board survived. In that moment, the invisible engineering of the redundancy stack became the difference between disaster and survival. Every time you fly, that same chain of backups is quietly standing guard. The Ram Air Turbine is the final link, ready to work only once when everything else is gone. Hidden. Beneath the surface of most commercial jets, the Ram Air Turbine RAT waits in silence. Its design is deliberate, compact, stowed behind a flush panel in the belly or wing root, ready to deploy at a moment's notice. On a standard Airbus A320 or Boeing 737, the RAT spans about 80 centimeters, matching the width of a large bicycle wheel. For the Airbus A380, the world's largest passenger jet, it stretches to 1.63 meters, nearly the length of a compact car. But size alone does not define its purpose. The RAT's true value lies in what it delivers when all else fails. At cruising speed, even the smallest turbine can generate 5 kilowatts, enough to keep flight controls and critical instruments running. On the A380, output surges to 70 kilowatts, rivaling a small generator truck. These numbers are not theoretical. They have been measured, certified, and proven in emergencies. The RAT powers only what is vital: flight controls, basic instruments, communications, leaving behind non-essentials like cabin lighting and galley ovens. A systems engineer who led certification tests puts it plainly: the RAT is built to do one thing: give you just enough to fly and land safely. It's not generous, but it's reliable. Placement is a careful calculation. Engineers position the RAT where it can catch clean airflow, but minimize drag when stowed. On the A320, it sits in the fuselage belly. On many Boeing wide-bodies, it is tucked into the wing root or underbelly. Over decades, these turbines have saved more than 2,400 lives, their readiness proven in the rarest, most demanding moments. The Ram Air Turbine operates on a logic that is both unforgiving and precise. Its activation depends on a chain of sensors monitoring the aircraft's electrical and hydraulic systems. If both main alternating current buses fail or every engine-driven generator stops, the system reacts instantly. The trigger is mechanical. A spring or pyrotechnic bolt snaps and releases the rat from its compartment, usually hidden in the fuselage or wing root. Within 5 to 12 seconds, the turbine swings into the airstream, blades spinning as the aircraft moves above 100 knots. Deployment is engineered for certainty. The system can activate automatically or through a guarded cockpit switch, but once released, the rat locks in place. One-way latches and single-use bolts prevent any chance of retraction or reset until the aircraft is safely on the ground. This one-time design guarantees that in the chaos of a power emergency, the rat will always deploy and never stow itself by accident. Speed matters. Below 100 to 150 knots, airflow is not enough to turn the turbine with force. The logic blocks deployment at low speeds or on the ground, protecting the mechanism and ensuring it is only used when it can deliver. The aircraft's batteries bridge the gap during those crucial seconds, but the rat's arrival is timed to provide just enough power and hydraulic pressure to keep the plane under control.
In the early hours of August 24, 2001, Air Transat Flight 236 was crossing the Atlantic, bound for Lisbon, when a fuel leak left the Airbus A330 with dry tanks more than 65 nautical miles from land. Both engines failed in quick succession and the cockpit went silent except for the warning chimes. With 306 people on board, the aircraft became a glider at 39,000 feet, descending over open water and darkness. The only thing standing between the crew and disaster was the Ram Air Turbine, now spinning in the slipstream below the fuselage. As the rat deployed, it delivered just enough hydraulic pressure and emergency electricity to keep the most basic flight controls and instruments alive. Captain Robert Piche and First Officer Dirk de Jager steered the powerless jet, relying on the minimal feedback and control the rat could offer. For nearly 20 minutes, the Airbus A330 glided, losing altitude but never losing command. The approach into Lajes Air Base on the Azores was rough. Tires blew, brakes faded, and the landing gear collapsed under the strain. Yet all 306 passengers and crew survived, with only minor injuries reported. There is a line from Captain Piche preserved in the official record. He said, "We've got no fuel." In that moment, the difference between a controlled landing and catastrophe rested on the rat's silent work. The system's limitations, its dependence on speed, its one-time use, its focus only on essentials, became the boundary between survival and tragedy. For every passenger who stepped onto solid ground that morning, the invisible engineering beneath their feet had delivered on its promise. This is why, even when everything else fails, the last backup matters. January 2009, U.S. Airways Flight 1549 lifted off from LaGuardia, climbing just 3 minutes before a flock of Canada geese struck both engines. Suddenly, the Airbus A320 was silent, gliding above the city with 155 people on board. The aircraft's batteries took over, but their charge would last only minutes. With no thrust and no time to climb, the crew faced a new enemy, altitude. At barely 3,000 feet, the Ram Air Turbine deployed into the icy morning air, its small blades spinning desperately to provide the bare minimum, just enough hydraulic pressure and emergency electricity to keep the flight controls alive. Unlike high-altitude glides, there was no margin, no long descent to buy time. The Ram Air Turbine's output, limited by the low airspeed and altitude, forced Captain Chesley Sullenberger and First Officer Jeffrey Skiles to fly with only the most basic instruments and sluggish controls. Every turn, every adjustment had to be precise. There was no second chance. Sullenberger later recalled that they were too low, too slow, and had too little power. Yet with the Hudson River ahead, he kept the jet stable and level. When the aircraft touched down on water, all 155 survived. The quiet work of a hidden turbine designed for moments like this had done its job, barely but completely. Certification for a one-time device like the Ram Air Turbine is uncompromising. Every Ram Air Turbine must prove on the ground that it will deliver power instantly, once and only once when commanded. Engineers use ground rigs and hydraulic mules to simulate the violent conditions of a real deployment. Turbines are extended into high-speed airflow from powerful fans, and their output is measured against strict thresholds for hydraulic pressure and electrical current. Each unit is cycled through deployment and operation, then inspected for wear to confirm that springs, latches, and generators will not hesitate in an emergency. After a Ram Air Turbine has been used, it cannot simply be stowed and forgotten. Maintenance technicians must manually retract the turbine, replace one-time components like deployment bolts and springs, and test the generator or pump for hidden damage. Only after passing these checks is the system certified for another flight. Collins Aerospace, the world's leading supplier, keeps a running tally, more than 2,400 lives saved by Ram Air Turbine deployments, each one a testament to the relentless discipline behind this final backup. For every passenger stepping onto a jet, this invisible safeguard stands ready, maintained and validated by hands that have seen what happens when every layer matters. A Ram Air Turbine, no larger than a bicycle wheel, delivers up to 70 kilowatts of life-saving power. It deploys only once and cannot be reset until landing. It exists because real emergencies like those faced on flights 143, 236, and 1549 demand uncompromising backup. Over 2,400 lives stand as proof. Safety is engineered, never assumed.